Ah, finally, a smiling Superman. What about me? Back in the cage! Roar! Welcome to 5 Points of Articulation. Today, I'm taking a look at the new DC Multiverse Classic Superman by McFarlane Toys. And for those who missed the last video, I have updated my scoring system. Instead of each category getting either 0, half a point, or 1, they'll now get 1 to 5, and the total will be the average. Starting off with the packaging, and Superman comes in a typical DC Multiverse window box. Already, we can see there's a few more accessories than usual. On the side, this is listed as Superman DC Classic. I'll have words on that in the next category. For those using apps like BrickSeek though, and here's the UPC. And on the back is some artwork that isn't classic exactly, but is modeled to look classic. Can't help but notice that this picture hides the trunks I'm going to be complaining about. It also does a great job of reminding me how badly I hope that someday we get a proper Lois Lane. With 85 years of artwork to choose from, it would have been nice if they'd chose some actual classic Superman artwork, but it's hardly the end of the world, and of course it's what's inside that counts. Even so, for packaging, I'm giving Classic Superman 4 out of 5. Moving on to presentation and getting him out of the package, this is a fantastic representation of a classic style Superman. Shame it's not what McFarlane actually did. Instead, we got this. Also, for those wondering, these trunks came from the Doomsday 2-pack. The red and yellow match really well, just don't look at them sideways. I'm guessing the size discrepancy is why McFarlane didn't do a simple part swap, but would it have killed the budget just to sculpt a new pair of trunks? I'd have gladly gone without an accessory or two just to get some new tooling, but I get ahead of myself. Classic Superman stands for truth, justice, and the American way at 7 inches, and is a color swap page puncher Superman with a new head. Unfortunately, I feel like I have to put classic in quotes. Page Punchers was inspired by the artwork of Lee Bermejo. This includes a darker color scheme, extra lines on the boots, and this more stylized belt. And being McFarlane, they also had to add some other extra details. On its own merit, it was a fine figure, and a lot of people liked the body and the proportions. In fact, I've seen a lot of customizers use this body for Brandon Routh Superman and also for Nicolas Cage. McFarlane themselves used it for Vampire Superman. I'm not saying you couldn't also use it for a classic Superman, but it would require some updating. The shape and number of chevrons on the boot, for example. The fact that a classic Superman really shouldn't have those rebirth wrist straps. As usual, there's no yellow S on the cape, and of course there's the trunks and belt piece. And all that's to say nothing of these gargantuan hands. Another baffling choice is the shade of blue that they used. Every time McFarlane makes a new one, they just get lighter and lighter. At the rate they're going, the next Superman McFarlane makes is going to look like this. Seriously, are they running out of ink? Superman has had several eras over the years, each with their own unique costume flourishes, but for my money, Superpowers came the closest to that classic color scheme. So by that metric, the colors on the Hush costume are just right. Where I will defend this figure, however, is the head sculpt. It is so rare that we get a good smiling Superman. I said a good one. I do like the Action Comics #1 though. Otherwise, the only one in recent memory is the Mezco version, and that set cost $120. Before that, and you've got to go back over a decade. So yeah, I find this very refreshing. I also like this waxy plastic that they used. To me, it just feels more natural. But even if they made all the changes I suggest, based on his proportions, I can't help but think he wouldn't be a better Superboy. And that's not an insult. We need a good Superboy. After I'm done with this video, I'm swapping the trunks, and that's pretty much where he's going to end up in my collection. As much as I like the new head, the negatives do outweigh the positives, most especially those boxing glove-sized hands. For presentation, I'm giving this Superman 2 out of 5. Moving on to posability, and this is a great opportunity to revisit this body using my new grading system. From the top, and Clark's neck is on a dumbbell joint. You can look up this high, which is decent, and look down a fair amount. Great tilt made even better by the smile. Oh, Lois, what have you gotten yourself into now? And all the way around. Moving down, and Superman can raise his arms just over 90 degrees. He does have a rotator cuff, and it gets the job done. Of course, he also has bicep swivel. He's got double jointed elbows with pretty much perfect bend. And then at the ends of the arms, those Hulk fists that he calls hands are they're on McFarlane-style balls that can swivel and hinge either up and down or side to side. Move into the middle and Superman has a diaphragm joint and a dumbbell waist. He can arch back this far, which for a flying character is perfect. Using both that diaphragm and his neck, here he is in a flying pose. Serious George Reeves vibes. Alas, he can only hunch forward this far. He does, however, get a really nice amount of tilt and twist. Of course, he has the typical McFarlane-style hips. Cal can kick about 45 degrees, but can do a perfect split. Pretty good amount of twist in the hip. And then, of course, we've got the double jointed knee, toe articulation, and McFarlane ankles that can swivel, hinge, and pivot. Hands down, articulation is the best part of this figure, especially for flying poses. For posability, I'm giving Classic Superman 5 out of 5. Moving on to playability, and all that reuse means we get a few extra hands. You know what? I'm keeping it in. Unfortunately, the extra hands are also extra large. In addition to these gestury Shakespeare in the Park ones, he's also got these flying ones. Again, I appreciate the thought, but did not one person in the company think maybe, just maybe, these are too big? Of course, they also included a trading card. Pause here if you don't know who Superman is. Instead of a regular figure stand, Supes comes with a flight stand. To McFarlane's credit, they're the only toy company that includes a flight stand as part of a regular release. But like I said in presentation, I would gladly trade it for some new tooling. Of course, playability is more than just accessories or wishful thinking, it's also about how well your figure plays with others. Starting with the rest of the Justice League, and here we have Nightfall and Year 2 versions of Batman. Scaling-wise, Nightfall is better, but color-wise, Year 2 is probably a better match. For those who prefer their Batman in black and gray though, and here we have Rebirth and 3 Jokers, and then rounding out the Trinity is Wonder Woman. I don't have the Platinum Edition, but I feel that the colors would probably match a bit better on that one. Flashpoint Barry Allen's a pretty nice match though, as is the Endless Winter Aquaman with the alternate Flashpoint head. For a couple of Green Lanterns though, and here we have the NECA Hal Jordan and the DC Multiverse John Stewart. And then rounding out the Justice League, and here we have the Platinum Edition version of Hawkman. I chose this version because the brighter colors were more like superpowers. For the rest of the Superman family, and here we have Con-El Superboy, the fact that they're the same size really does indicate that this could be a Superboy figure. Next are DC Essentials and McFarlane versions of Supergirl. The reds are okay between the two DC Multiverse figures, but obviously Supergirl doesn't have yellow and Superman is a way too bright blue. And since I'm convinced that this is a much better Superboy, here he is with Krypto. That said, for some Superman villains, and here we have Lex Luthor, the Rebirth version of Bizarro, General Zod, a specific Brainiac, and Lobo, who's so big that his hair is reaching out of frame. For a roto-scale comparison, here's Superman with Pizza Spidey and the Spectacular Spider-Man. And as always, here he is with Stealth Iron Man. Naturally, I decided to save the Superman comparisons for head swaps. Also, I hope you don't mind, but I decided to proactively swap out the trunks. First, and here's DC vs. Dark Horse by NECA. As someone who isn't crazy about the NECA head, I do like how this looks. That said, the ball joint does force it to sit a bit high. Moving over to McFarlane, and here's Action Comics 1000. The head skew's a bit small, but it doesn't look half bad. Just keep in mind that with most of these, you'll need to do some painting because of the different styles of plastic. Other way around, and I have shown you this head on this body before, but with the lighter color scheme, it does feel like a more traditional Superman. Next up, and here we have Hush. Again, this one is a bit on the small side, but the thicker neck widens the head out, which I do think helps a bit. Again though, looking at this face with this color scheme, and you can see what I meant earlier. Conversely, this neck narrows this face out. I'm not saying it's a good match, but it's more narrow. Here we have my Kit Bash combining Hush with the Atomic Skull 2-pack. I actually like this a lot more than I expected. Even the skin tones are a better match than I predicted. Oh, and just for jollies, I swapped the hands out with Shazam Fury of the Gods, and these scale much better. Using superpowers as a comparison, and this might just be this custom's final form. Let me know what you think in the comments. I have a feeling this is going to look silly, but here we have the return of Superman, and yep, it does look pretty silly. Not so much on camera, but under normal light conditions, the skin tones actually aren't half bad of a match though. On the flip side, if the Dark Knight Returns body was too big for this Superman, then this body is definitely too small. And honestly, head-wise, it's just Action Comics 1000, but with longer hair. For the Superman of Future's End, and here we have John Kent, I gotta admit, although the face is clearly Cal, this does feel more like John's personality. If you were able to do something something with the hair, it would be a pretty good custom. Next, and here we have Superboy Prime. Reinforcing my point that this probably should have been Superboy, this head scale is great. He'll just need to be repainted, and unless you can paint eyes, you'll need to be okay with the fact that he seems a bit shifty. Other way around, and it scales well, it's just way too happy for Superboy Prime. For one that I'm sure a lot of you were very curious about, and here we have the NECA Christopher Reeve. This has a lot of promise. Obviously, you'll have to do something about the hands, and it's worth noting that the symbol wasn't quite so three-dimensional in the Christopher Reeve movies, but with no 1978 Superman figures on the horizon, this could be the answer. Lastly, the Mezco 112 Collective Man of Steel. Being a smaller head, this balances out the body pretty well. Not only that, but the ball joint actually snaps into place so you get full articulation. I'm still looking for hands that'll fit this body, and if you can think of any, let me know. But the biggest benefit to this is that there are so many other Mezco heads you can use. For example, you can make him look angry, or you can even use his heat vision. While Superman does come with alternate hands, they're just as gigantic and therefore silly as his fists, and it's just plain too small for most of your other Justice League and Superman family figures. A lot of the problems would have been minimized if they just called him Superboy, but as is, for playability, I'm giving Classic Superman 3 out of 5. This leaves us with nothing left to discuss but the price. Depending on where you get him, Classic Superman's going to set you back between $20 to $23. I'm not going to act like this figure is all bad, but there were just too many corners cut for the cost. For price, I'm giving Classic Superman 3 points, averaging to a total of 3.4 out of 5. Agree? Disagree? Sound off in the comments and let me know if you want to use this as Superman, Superboy, or just pass on it altogether. Hey guys, don't you want to do a head swap with me? Guys? If you like this video, check out one of these. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back again real soon, but until then, play nice and have fun.